Ancient miners. Long before machines carried workers underground, mining was powered by muscle, fire, tools, and desperation. Ancient miners entered the earth for gold, silver, copper, tin, lead, and mercury, but the deeper they went, the more the job became a fight against darkness itself. In the Roman world, mining could be especially brutal. Some mines were worked by enslaved people, criminals, and forced laborers. Mercury mining was particularly deadly because mercury exposure could poison the nervous system, damage organs, and slowly destroy the body. Dartmouth's Toxic Metals Project notes that Romans used mercury mines as penal institutions and understood that prisoners sent there were likely to be poisoned. The danger was not only poison. Tunnels could collapse, air could become unbreathable, water could flood shafts. Workers used lamps in cramped underground passages, where smoke, dust, and heat made survival harder with every hour. A miner could die suddenly in a cave-in or slowly from the materials he was forced to extract. Ancient mining was dangerous because the worker was treated as replaceable. The metal mattered more than the body that pulled it from the ground. Every coin, weapon, statue, and ornament made from ancient metals carried an hidden cost. People who disappeared into the earth so civilization could shine above it. Chimney sweeps. In the narrow chimneys of old cities, one of the most dangerous jobs in history was given to children. During the 18th and 19th centuries, especially in Britain, young boys were used as climbing chimney sweeps because their small bodies could fit inside tight flues. They climbed through soot-filled passages to scrape away buildup that could cause fires. The work was dirty, frightening, and physically damaging. Some children got stuck, some suffocated, others suffered burns, falls, deformities, respiratory disease, and cancers linked to soot exposure. The British Parliament records that the Chimney Sweeps Act of 1834 outlawed apprenticing children below age 10 and prohibited children under 14 from actually cleaning chimneys. That law shows how serious the abuse had become, though protections took time to strengthen and enforce. The job was dangerous in a way that feels especially cruel, because it depended on a child's size. The very thing that made the worker useful also made him vulnerable. A grown man could not fit into the narrowest spaces, so poor children were sent where adults could not go. A chimney sweep's workplace was not a mine or battlefield. It was the inside of a city's homes. Behind warm fireplaces and comfortable rooms, children were crawling through black tunnels of soot, doing a job that society needed but preferred not to see. Powder monkeys. On wooden warships, danger did not always belong to the sailors firing the cannons. Sometimes it belonged to the boys running between decks with gunpowder in their hands. Powder monkeys were young boys or teenagers who carried gunpowder from the ship's magazine to the guns during naval battles. The job required speed, courage, and small bodies. Warships were crowded, smoky, loud, and chaotic during combat. Cannons recoiled. Splinters flew. Fires could start. A single spark near gunpowder could become disaster. Historic UK describes powder monkeys as boys, sometimes as young as 12, whose role was to ferry gunpowder to artillery pieces during battle. Their smaller size helped them move through cramped ships quickly, but it also placed them close to one of the most explosive materials on board. The danger of this job was concentrated into movement. Each trip between powder storage and cannon crew carried risk. If the ship was hit, if flames spread, if a barrel ignited, there might be no time to run. Powder monkeys were not commanding fleets or choosing wars. They were children inside floating battle machines, helping feed the guns that shook the ship around them. Their job shows how warfare often hides its youngest victims in the machinery of victory. Wellers. Welling was one of the most dangerous jobs ever performed at sea because it asked men in small boats to attack some of the largest animals on Earth. In the 18th and 19th centuries, whalers sailed for months or years in search of whales. When a whale was spotted, crews lowered smaller boats and rowed toward it with harpoons. That meant leaving the relative safety of the ship to approach a powerful animal that could dive, thrash, smash a boat, or drag men across the water at terrifying speed. The New Bedford Whaling Museum describes whaling as an exceptionally dangerous business, both physically and economically, and notes that injuries and deaths were common to almost every voyage in the Yankee whale fishery. The job was dangerous before, during, and after the hunt. Storms could sink ships. Disease could spread on board. Food could spoil. A whale could destroy a boat in seconds. Once a whale was killed, the work remained hazardous as crews processed blubber, handled sharp tools, worked around boiling oil, and endured the constant instability of the sea. Whaling was not a romantic adventure for most men who lived it. It was exhaustion, risk, blood heat, salt, and uncertainty. The ocean was the workplace, the whale was the target, and death could come from either one. Plague doctors. A plague doctor entered places many people were trying to escape. During plague outbreaks in Europe, physicians and medical workers were expected to examine the sick, record deaths, treat patients, and sometimes serve cities that were overwhelmed by fear. The famous beaked costume is often misunderstood. It was not a Black Death uniform from the 1300s. The recognizable plague doctor costume appeared later, especially in the 17th century, and was meant to protect the wearer from disease, according to the medical ideas of the time. The beak was filled with aromatic substances because many people believed disease spread through bad air or poisonous smells. The long coat, gloves, boots, hat, and cane created distance between doctor and patient. Some of these features may have offered limited practical protection, especially against contact with fleas or bodily fluids, even though the theory behind the outfit was flawed. The danger came from proximity. Plague doctors dealt with infected people, frightened families, dead bodies, and crowded urban conditions. They worked when medical knowledge was limited and survival often depended on luck as much as treatment. This job was dangerous because it required walking toward invisible danger. A soldier could see an enemy. A sailor could see a storm. A plague doctor entered a room where the threat might already be in the air, on the bedding, in the clothing, or inside the body of the patient asking for help. Coal miners. Coal-powered factories, trains, ships, homes, and empires. But the people who dug it out often paid with their lungs, bones, and lives. Underground coal mining was dangerous in almost every direction. Roofs could collapse. Explosive gases could ignite. Dust could poison the lungs. Flooding could trap workers. Machinery could crush them. In the Victorian period, even children worked underground. My learning notes that many children began underground work around age 8. With some as young as 5, often working hours similar to adults for much lower pay. The darkness of a coal mine was not poetic. It was practical danger. Workers crawled through narrow spaces, pulled heavy loads, opened ventilation doors, or cut coal with hand tools. A small mistake, a weak support beam, or a pocket of gas could turn a normal shift into a disaster. Coal mining was dangerous because it sat at the center of industrial hunger. Cities wanted light and heat. Factories wanted power. Railways wanted fuel. That demand pulled generations of workers underground. The coal miner's job shows the hidden side of progress. The modern world rose on energy, and much of that energy came from men and children working beneath it, breathing the dust that kept the machines above moving. Radium dial painters. At the start of the 20th century, radium seemed almost magical. It glowed in the dark, appeared in consumer products, and was promoted before its dangers were fully understood by the public. For young women hired to paint watch and instrument dials, that glow became deadly. Radium dial painters used luminous paint to make numbers shine in darkness. Many were taught to shape their brushes with their lips to create a fine point, a technique called lip pointing. Each time they did it, they could ingest tiny amounts of radioactive material. Wired's account of the Radium Girls describes young women in the 1920s, painting watch dials with radium-infused paint and using their mouths to shape brushes, leading to severe illness and deaths. The job looked clean compared to mining or whaling. It was indoor work. It required precision. Some workers even played with the glowing paint, putting it on nails or teeth because the danger was not obvious at first. That is what made it so horrifying. The workplace did not look like a death trap. It looked modern, scientific, and almost glamorous. The poison was invisible except for the beautiful glow that made the product valuable. Radium painting became one of history's most chilling examples of industrial ignorance and corporate failure. The workers were not killed by a sudden accident. They were slowly harmed by a substance they were told was safe. Lighthouse Keepers. A lighthouse keeper's job sounds peaceful until you imagine doing it during a storm. Before automation, keepers lived in isolated stations, maintaining lights that guided ships away from rocks, shoals, and dangerous coastlines. The work demanded constant attention. The lamp had to be kept burning. Lenses had to be cleaned. Fuel had to be managed. Buildings had to be repaired against salt, wind, fog, and waves. At remote stations, isolation could be as dangerous as the weather. Lighthouse life could become deadly when storms cut off communication and rescue. The famous Flannan Isles mystery in Scotland began in December 1900, when 3 keepers vanished from the remote island Mar lighthouse. Investigators later concluded they were likely swept away by violent weather while working outside, though the lack of bodies helped turn the case into legend. The keepers' danger was not constant violence. It was responsibility under loneliness. If the light failed, ships could wreck. If a keeper was injured, help might be far away. If a storm struck, the sea could surround the station like a wall. A lighthouse keeper stood between sailors and disaster while living inside a disaster zone himself. The job required patience, discipline, and the courage to stay when the safest place was anywhere else. Ice cutters. Before electric refrigerators, people still needed ice. That demand created one of the coldest and most dangerous seasonal jobs in history: ice cutting. Workers went onto frozen lakes, rivers, and ponds to cut blocks of natural ice. They measured the surface, scored it with tools, sawed it into sections, and moved heavy blocks using hooks, sleds, horses, and conveyor systems. The ice was then stored in insulated icehouses and sold for cooling food and drinks. The danger was immediate. A worker could fall through weak ice into freezing water. Tools could slip. Horses could panic. Heavy blocks could crush hands, legs, or bodies. The cold numbed fingers and slowed reactions, making every mistake more serious. Ice cutting is dangerous in a quieter way than battlefield jobs. There is no enemy, no explosion, no predator. The danger is the workplace itself, a frozen surface that looks solid until it is not. This job belongs in history because it shows how ordinary comfort once required extraordinary risk. A cold drink, preserved meat, or chilled cargo could begin with men standing on a frozen lake, cutting the ground beneath their own feet into a target from underneath. It was slow, claustrophobic warfare, where victory could be measured by the moment stone finally cracked overhead. Early high-rise steelworkers. When modern cities began reaching upward, steelworkers walked across narrow beams high above the ground with little protection compared to today's standards. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, skyscraper and bridge construction created a new kind of dangerous job. Workers balanced on steel frames, moved heavy beams, handled rivets, and assembled structures in wind, cold, heat, and noise. Safety harnesses and modern fall protections were not always standard. A single slip could mean death. The job was dangerous not only because of height, but because of rhythm. Construction moved fast. Beams had to be placed. Rivets had to be heated and thrown. Crews depended on timing and trust. The city below kept moving while workers stepped across the skeleton of buildings that did not yet have walls. High-rise steelwork became iconic because it looked impossible. Photographs of workers sitting casually on beams above New York helped create a myth of fearless labor. But behind the image was real risk. These men were building the modern skyline with their bodies exposed to open air. Their job reminds us that cities do not simply rise. They are carried upward by workers who stand where most people would freeze. Thank you for watching. To support the creation of more videos like this, please like this video, subscribe, and leave a comment suggesting a topic for our next video. Thanks again, and goodbye.